What Juices You. We talk about what it is that leaders wake up in the morning and it fuels them. They don't have to fuel it. And so I've been asking this question to leaders for over 20 years. What juices you? Tom Emery, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brady. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I want to introduce Tom. Tom is the founder and principal of HEX. And so you're going to learn a little bit more about that organization. Tom has written a book called People. I want to highly recommend it right off the get-go. And has a very, very significant background as a chief people person and lots of other functions inside HR. So lots to learn. You don't have to be an HR person to be listening to this podcast. But if you are, I'm telling you, you're in for a treat. So Tom, let's just get right into it. You've written this book, People. You have frameworks that truly work. You've got this story inside there around Joanna and Lorraine and Nigel that is pretty captivating. Tell me, as it relates to you bringing your message to the world, what is it that juices you so much about that?
What a great question to start with. So I was, as you said, I was an HR professional for many, many years, and then I was a chief people officer for the last 6 years or so of my corporate career, and that was in the City of London in a financial services organisation. And, you know, when I went into that job, I really didn't have a clue what I was doing, I'll be honest. And the first couple of years were a very steep learning curve where I had to, you know, really learn the ropes very, very quickly, try a lot of things. Some of them worked, some of them really didn't work very well at all. And so, I didn't really have anyone to go to or anybody to go and ask, like, how should I be doing this job and what's important and you know, how do I behave in a way that's going to make me really impactful? So when I set up my consultancy, I thought, this is something that I need to put out in the world. I'd done 6 years, I'd learned all that stuff, and I wanted to give it back and get my message out to as many people as I could. So that's why I wrote the book. And it's a story. It's not a traditional business book. So it tells the story of Joanna, as you've said. And it probably won't surprise you or listeners to know that there's quite a lot of me in Joanna. She goes to a coach and she works through my CHRO impact model. And that was where the book came from, and hopefully it's out there in the world helping as many people as it can.
Well, I hope that happens through this podcast as well. Tom, in the book, there's just this beautiful interplay between culture as a driver, as the engine of performance. And what we see a lot in Canada, for sure, in leadership teams, is there are 7 on the team and 3 of them are going, culture schmelcher. Like what really matters is optimization, transformation, performance, and culture, if anything, gets in the way of that because it's soft, it's ephemeral. And when people over-index on all the people stuff, it's like, we don't get anything done. And so could you just step into that for us and help us reconcile what seems to be this irreconcilable clash between culture and performance?
Yeah, I mean, culture and performance are one and the same thing, really. And yeah, all those words like performance, commercials, optimization, all that's all driven in many ways by culture. And you know, culture really is behaviors. It's how people, it's what they do. It's how they behave with each other. It's how they talk to each other. And so I don't think it's soft. I don't think it gets in the way of people, of performance. I think it probably only does that when it's not done very well. And if you build a culture which is very direct but kind, you know, lots of radical candor in Kim Scott's language, you know, lots of assertive and actually probably no nonsense way of talking to each other, conversations, challenge, all built on a foundation of trust. That is going to be a culture which will make any organisation perform better. So I suppose that's my message. It's that, culture isn't getting in the way. Culture's there to move you on, but you have to create it intentionally.
Yeah, I wonder how we got there. If you were to trace that back, where culture is a synonym for that which is soft, that which is not business oriented, not about performance. Like I know that not all leaders see it that way, but a lot of them do. And I'm wondering, how did we get there? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that as human beings, we're programmed to avoid discomfort. And so often a really healthy performance culture is also going to have quite an element of discomfort, isn't in it? It's going to, the characteristics are that people are going to be saying things that other people, that might be challenging and, that might push people's buttons and trigger people. So I think naturally, when we talk about culture, because it's sort of tended to turn into this thing about, oh, well, culture's nice, and therefore, if we want to have a great culture, we should be removing all discomfort from it. But that's not a great culture. A great culture normalizes discomfort and helps people have the resilience to work with it and to thrive in it. Not just not cope with it and not push it to a side.
Normalizes discomfort. That the stress, the tension, the discomfortness, the chaos, all of those we see that the most normal response to those is avoidance. And for good reasons. I mean, it turns on our limbic system in a way that nothing else can. And we end up becoming very brittle and rigid and lightning fast decisions that don't necessarily take in the nuanced, the future-based, the generative, the creative. And so we lose all of that because we don't have that ability to sit in discomfort. As you're helping CHROs and people leaders with that discomfort, with that sense of sitting in tension longer until a more generative solution, how do you help people with that?
That's a difficult question. So a lot of discomfort, I think, comes out of wanting to control. And, life and business and work is just, in itself, it's not something that we can control.
Right.
Most things are out of our control, but we think they're within our control.
Right.
So when I think about how I sort of support leaders, a lot of the way that I support leaders and HR leaders, more specifically, is around the discomfort often of not doing anything, of not having the conversation, or of not solving the problem, and allowing yourself space and time to see how things pan out. And so, I don't quite know the answer to your questions, because actually we need to learn what discomfort feels like, recognize when we feel it, and then not jump to our trigger behavior, which might be, as you say, to avoid. It might also to be overthink or go towards people. It might be to become quite, overly ingratiating or dutiful. And actually, what we probably need to do is do the opposite of what our brain is telling us to do in that moment, and sit with it and sit with that discomfort and see what happens. And usually the discomfort passes and you've probably made a better decision out on the back of it.
I've got this thing that I've written about in my latest book, The Power of Conversation. It's like 6 seconds of panic that we trade for 60 minutes of progress. But if I can't get past that 6 seconds of I'm at the precipice and everything inside of me is saying I have to recoil, I have to retreat, I have to avoid, because the 6 seconds of panic is always there in those difficult, just uncomfortable conversations. So it's almost like I'm making a friend with my future self here. Which is vitally important, because this very temporal discomfort is nothing compared to the tax that I am going to pay should I leave this unaddressed. So could you speak to that?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example of something that happened to me a few weeks ago. So I find I'm quite a sensitive person, right? So I find it quite difficult or I have to work hard to manage my emotions.
Yeah.
So I think I feel emotions quite viscerally relative to lots of other people. And I also have like a strong sense of shame, quite high standards for myself. And so, if I'm attacked in any way, so the other week I received an email from a client. It was, quite critical of me. And I recognized that there was something coming up in me which wasn't going to be very helpful. So my natural instinct is reply to the email, tell them why they're completely wrong, be defensive. This isn't my fault. This is your fault, whatever. But, I recognized that I recognized I was triggered, didn't send the email,
right.
Waited a few hours, and I thought, right, I'm okay now. I'm okay to send this email. Sent a much more measured email, sent that off. A few hours later, looked at the email that I'd sent. No, I still wasn't where I should have been. And I thought, what on earth have you sent that for? It still sounds defensive. It still sounds, like I'm trying to sort of pass the buck, pass responsibility. And the reason that I tell that story is because our brain is just super good at tricking us, and we have such ingrained responses that are genetic and learned. And we need to be able to stop. We need to be able to recognize when we are triggered, sit with the discomfort of not doing the thing that our brain is telling us to do, see if we can ride it out.
It is so beautiful, and I feel like for people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we all encounter that. Every business leader encounters that moment because the sheer exigencies of the business world and the pressures and the timelines and the responsibilities and the uncertainties and ambiguities, they trigger us in 15 different ways. But it feels to me like that person who is the CHR or Chief People Officer is, in one sense, standing for something, humanizing work, that it's not that other people don't value it, but it's almost like this. So we're talking to leaders and we say, well, you want a great customer experience, you want a great employee experience, and you want great numbers. Is there one of those that drives the other two? And they don't have to think about it for too long before they say, well, the great employee experience drives the great customer experience, which drives numbers. But then we ask them, okay, so in the moment when you're pressed, when you're rocked onto your back foot, what is the first one that you will sacrifice? It's always the employee experience, right? Yeah. And so we're actually saying, I will go into debt in this area, believing that it'll come back around and somehow I'll be able to pay that back. But somehow there's this accrued debt that can happen. I will take and draw from the employee experience in order to hit the numbers or in order to meet the customer experience. And so the one person who stands as the guardian of all this is that people person. And so can you talk to me a little bit about how you help people and how people can be that guardian? It's like, that's maybe not the right language, but at least somebody who is standing for, injustice is not okay. Extracting the best of our employees and making money off the back of our employees, that's not okay. You know, it's going to be the people person who says those types of things, right?
Yeah. So I actually use that language, Brady, about the HR leader being the guardian of culture. And almost being like the gatekeeper of talent as well into the organization. So, these are not things that we can do as HR leaders, people ourselves. This is stuff that we have to influence other people to do. And so back to the point I made on control, like we can't control how other people behave. So if you've got a CEO that you work with that has decided actually the employee experience is going to be devalued in to allow, I don't know, to hit the numbers or whatever it is, then we can't control that. That's their decision. They're going to do that whether we want them to or not. But what we can do is we can change our behavior so that it's more likely that the CEO makes the a better decision and doesn't devalue the people, the employee experience. And I think the mistake that often people, HR leaders make is to think that they somehow have to persuade a CEO that that's the thing to do, and that it's almost like a win-lose situation. But actually there's a lot of grey area between that, between that sort of black and white binary way of thinking about things. And when I work with leaders, I work on how they can hold up a mirror to the business in a non-judgmental, non-personal way, that this is business feedback. This is not about the CEO and the CEO's values and whether they're doing something wrong and, making a wrong judgment. This is just actually reflecting back to say, well, this is what I see happening. So I see you, I see us devaluing the people agenda, the employee experience, and this is the consequence that I'm seeing. What do you think? And not say, you're wrong, you shouldn't have done it. And so, and that is a much more incremental way of looking at things. So you don't have one conversation and the CEO decides, oh yeah, you're absolutely right, let's focus on the employee experience. This is many, many conversations, many feeding things back and reflecting back. And I think that's a much more powerful way of influencing. I think it's calmer. I think it feels more values driven, more open, more honest.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm probably rambling a little bit now.
Not
Brady,
at all.
But, does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense. And I'm thinking that something else that you are really helping people, HR people with, is having an enterprise-wide sensibility and being very cognizant about how people and the people function is an enabler to performance and innovation and all the things all the metrics that matter. So when that CHRO comes and has that iterative conversation, it's already like, I'm not the opponent that's coming from the people side. I am in solidarity with you around, of course we need transformation, optimization, performance. We need to hit our numbers. And so I'm having this conversation with you about extraction or devaluing the employee experience because we both care about sustainable results. We both care about what is the word on the street about our organization, which could tarnish our ability to attract the brightest and the best, or could actually have the brightest and the best silently walking out our doors. And so that kind of a person, when they come and have a conversation, it feels to me like they're going to have a greater audience with that CEO.
Yeah, I think you're talking about credibility there. And you build credibility, I think, with your executive partners and your CEO by being curious about the commercials of your business, whether that's, if you're in a business that makes profit, then understanding what the profit levers are and what the revenue levers are and all that sort of stuff. If you're a not-for-profit, understanding like how you deliver quality services at the right, at the right the right value. And I think, so in the CHRO impact framework, which is the model that the book is based on, I talk about this idea of being a commercial explorer, and that is really understanding the business, because I observe a lot of HR leaders that don't really have any sort of detailed understanding of how their business is making money and what actually matters to some of the revenue generating or operational areas or whatever it is that they work in, and everything is just couched in this people agenda. And we have to be more we have to think more broadly than that. We have to think more big picture than that to build that credibility, because you're right, if you've got the credibility, then people will listen to you when you start talking about something which they perhaps don't agree with, and they'll have that conversation with you because they trust you.
Yep. When you look at some of the best that you've seen, have they they've been a COO, they've been in sales, they've been in tech, they've been in finance, and they come to that CHRO position informed with and shaped by all of those experiences? Or is it just somebody, when you talk about the exploring and understanding what commercializes and what helps us monetize, is that just somebody who's done a good job of at least getting the right amount of exposure for a certain amount of time? Like, how does that work? Is it I've got to step into their shoes by being in the role, or I can get inculcated with all that matters to a salesperson, a sales leader, or a COO? Talk to us a little bit about how that person gets a rounded view of the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about asking questions. So I don't think you need to have been a sales manager to understand, what drives a sales team, how you set up a sales team to be successful. It's all about asking questions. It's all about being interested. And I think the other thing is it's all about being brave with your views, because, I'll be honest, when I was a chief people officer, I spent a lot of time in exco meetings, sitting, writing emails and doing other things until, it's people agenda time. I'll come alive. I'll present my paper. I'll get approval for, a leadership development program. And then, we'll move on to something else and I'll go back to sleep, or I'll go back to my emails. Now, that is not credible HR leadership. That's not enterprise leadership. And actually, you learn by offering opinions and asking questions that might, again, feel quite uncomfortable, because It might be like, you might feel like you look a bit silly because you're asking a silly question. But generally, there are no silly questions. And, like the more that you offer your opinions, and people will say, I'm not quite sure that that's right. And say, okay, tell me more about that. Or you're just going to learn, and you're going to build that confidence to do it more. And that's how you get the commercial awareness that you need to be successful, I think.
Yeah. Tom, when we're working with people at the top of the house in HR, often there's it's a bit of a combat between engagement and energy, and they can get mono-focused on the engagement survey and all the machinery that surrounds the survey. But if you ask them, okay, what are you doing from a people strategy point of view to manage people's energy? There's a vacuous stare that comes back. It's like, how do you manage that? How do you measure that? And so Juice, as you can imagine, is a company that cares a lot about energy, and we in no way do we denigrate employee engagement. We always feel that energy fuels and sustains engagement. But in terms of your work with people, how do you help them with those two things?
I probably take it back to something simpler. So I don't think that there's much that's complicated about leadership, and in its foundational form. So there are lots of small things, foundational things that leaders can do to be very, very effective leaders, and often I think we get mixed up with some of the sort of grandiose leadership, qualities, and, like talking about strategy and all that sort of thing. Leadership is a lot about how you make people feel. And that's linked to both engagement and to energy, I think.
Yeah.
So if you think about engagement scores, well, for me, engagement scores are a starting point for a conversation. They're not really that much more than that. Because if I get an engagement score that says 50% of my people are thinking about leaving the company in the next 2 years or something, well, that doesn't really tell me much, other than I've got a bit of a problem here that I need to go and find out what's going on. I need to go and ask some questions about, well, what if you do want to leave, what's making you want to leave? And what can we do differently to make things better for you? And to be honest, I think a lot of that is probably going to come back to how they're led. And it's not going to come back to how fantastically strategic and visionary the leader is. It's going to come back actually to, well, do I take time to get to know this person? Do I, understand what energizes them and what, makes them tick? And do I throw work at them which helps them with their energy and, makes them feel, really motivated? And do I understand what drains their energy, and can I remove as much of that stuff as I can and give that to somebody that perhaps it energizes? Or is there things that I need to unblock? Are there processes, or am I just doing something that really irritates them day by day? That it's just this, the tension and the irritation is just growing and growing until one day they're just going to say, I can't cope with this anymore. I'm going to leave the organization. is it clear what that person needs is needed to do in this organization? Am I clear as a leader what they're there to do? And do I talk to them about that and make sure they do it really well? And finally, do I understand what they need from me? And do I understand how they want me to speak to them, how much time they want me to spend with them, how much guidance they want, do they want coaching, direction, all that sort of stuff? And I think if you just get back to these basics, I think energy and engagement will work themselves out in some way.
I love what you're saying. And it feels to me like, today, if you look at a document, instantly how much of that was generated by chat and how much was generated by a human being, right?
Yeah.
And so we have fake news, we have real news, we have fake everything, we've got real everything. And so it feels to me like we're at this inflection point of, if I can get the whiff of something human, it is incredibly alluring to me. And we're not Luddites. We don't want to in any way denigrate tech for all that it can do. But I feel like we have this gravitational pull and this attraction to believe that tech will win the day. And it's meant to serve, but it loves to rule. And so as it relates to the engagement survey, it's like we want these broad, sweeping interventions that will fix everything. And what you're saying is, no, go have some conversations. We have HRIS platforms we need to be having people populating screens as they're doing a performance. And the person who's on the other side of that feels like, yeah, well, this is robotic. This is like so transactional. Same with recognition. So you have a recognition process where you can recognize somebody and they're able to redeem that for a whole bunch of tchotchkes, and people feel completely unseen and completely unappreciated. And so we lean toward the tech thinking that it will solve all of these problems, when the human interaction that you just talked about is the one that people are just aching for. Can you talk about how you help people reconcile and utilize the very best of AI, of all of the other technologies, in a way that enhances and amplifies and humanizes that employee experience? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, so I wouldn't consider myself an AI expert by any stretch of the imagination. AI in itself is very, it's technical. I'm not a technical person. I don't know how to code. I don't know how to tell ChatGPT how to code for me. That's just not in my wheelhouse. I'm not interested in that. But what I am really interested in is the humanization of AI,
right?
And how you see AI. Yes, lots, companies that don't embrace AI, I'm sure will get left behind very quickly. But I think companies that implement AI really badly and digitization really badly and don't see it as a really important, it's a change leadership project, essentially. And it's something that we have to be doing all the time. And what great HR leaders do is they make change human, and they turn change from a plan and a project into something that people can feel and can cope with. And if you think about coaching, for example, and people saying, oh, well, you can get coaching off ChatGPT and things like that. Well, yeah, you can. I'm not sure how useful it is. You can get coaching from that, but I met a coaching client today who is really struggling with quite a lot of her job. And I spent an hour and a half with her. 30 minutes of that, she was in tears. At the beginning, she got a big hug off me. At the end, she got a big hug off me. I sat and I listened. Now, you cannot get that off ChatGPT. You cannot get that off AI. And that is human, and we do need human connection. I think often we think we don't, but we do. And so my work is always focused on, everything that I do is focused on, how do I make things human so that people can cope with it, enjoy it, belong, feel included, feel safe with it. I think that's really important.
Oh, it's beautiful. I just want to take a breath. I want to take a breath. That's, back to the energy thing for just a second. Energy doesn't become energy without emotion.
What a great point.
And so and emotion doesn't become a felt emotion without some sort of humanity. Like, that's the thing, is what you and I are experiencing right now. There's this, our brains are being bathed with oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin, and very difficult. I think that AI can trigger some of that in a synthetic manner, but it doesn't end up feeling the same. So it doesn't end up producing the emotion that will create sustainable energy. So making everything human, I mean, it should be at the center of the people function, right?
Yeah. I mean, we always use the old Maya Angelou quote about people, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you make them feel. And, when I think about the important people that have helped me in my career and actually the people that work with me in Hex now, the bonds that I have with these people, they're so strong. Like, the trust is so strong, and they nourish me. This goes far beyond what any technology is able to do. And I think if I had a wish, I wish that people would actually open themselves up a bit more to what other people can really offer them and what connection with other people can offer. Because I think there's so much in there for people.
One of the things that you do in your work is, I think you're helping people understand how their identity can actually become something that caps their transformation. Have I got that right?
In what sense?
So I'm just looking here. So blind spots that are tied to strength, where we, and our identity, we perceive ourselves a certain way, and if that is brittle and is not malleable and not plastic, then we actually cap our ability for growth and transformation and self-actualization. There's something in your work. Maybe I'm not articulating it the right way.
I mean, so what I would say about identity is that often I think people build an identity around their strengths, around what gives them energy, back to the energy point, and also the role that they've always played in life, right? So I have some classic, like, people pleasing tendencies.
Okay.
I'm a problem solver. I like to look after people. I like to rescue people when they're feeling bad. I want to make people feel good, which is a strength, right? I can do a lot of that, and I know I can do it well. But a lot of the time, that just goes into something else which is not helping me.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's not actually helping them because I'm not doing it very well. And so I think often we have to let go of our identity sometimes, and that might be uncomfortable, back to the discomfort point. So I notice a lot of HR folk who go into HR because they want to work with people. Well, you're seeing people sometimes in their worst situations, and absolutely at their worst, when they've just been fired or they've just been on the end of a final written warning, or or you're dealing with them when they've been maybe bereaved, or when they're upset about something. And if you're someone like me that wants to rescue people, wants to make people feel better, well, if I've just told you you're getting fired, I can't make you feel better. Like, I have to give you empathy, compassion, and listen to you, but I cannot, by talking and putting my arm around you, make you feel better about that. It's just a rubbish situation. You're going to have to process it. You're going to have to move through the grief of what's going on, and then you'll come out the other side, and I'll be there all the time as you go through. But I can't change that. And so my identity as someone who, as someone who can make things better for people, is constantly being taxed, and I have to be okay with that. And sometimes I have to let go and say, the best thing I can do here for that person is to walk away and let them process and just be there when they need me.
That's such an elegant way. So well put. It feels like, I can imagine you as a coach, because you do a lot of coaching, that back to discomfort, that there are a lot of inflection points in the coaching conversation where you just need to let that person sit with their discomfort, and everything inside you wants to rescue them. So that likability, that nurturing, helping, rescuing, it can become an act of self-betrayal.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
Bo, that's not me. That's Bo CO. He's the author of. He was one of the world classic and champion debaters from Harvard. But anyway, just talking about how likability and agreeability becomes self-betrayal. I think it's just really that's a place where chief people officers and HR people in general have to watch. Where have I betrayed myself? I think Glennon Doyle says you need to disappoint enough people so that you never disappoint yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think you've talked
powerful.
about that identity of the helper. A lot of people in HR, I'm here to help. I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to nurture. I'm here to rescue. That's a big kind of archetype, isn't it?
It is. And I think I try to talk very much less about supporting others and to talk much more about enablement and how you're enabling people to be, to be at their best and to be impactful. And I think they are different things, and it takes real discipline to be able to really stick to that. And it will feel like a self-betrayal actually, but you are living actually much more truly to yourself if you stick with it. It's the betrayal comes from just trying to be everything to everybody.
So back to radical candor and directness and truth-telling. One of our biggest challenges with organizations is building the challenge function. Because we're so heavily, there was a time when everybody was just pushy and binary and it's like, and directive. And what we have in our culture, at least in Canada, now we're a polite culture, so that's one challenge in itself. But I would say even in just North America in general, we have now over-indexed on empathy, nurture, being nice, being liked, being agreeable, etc. So what is being lost is the challenge function. And without it, then of course leaders end up in a vacuum, and they're one thing they do without is reality. So they're the emperor who has no clothes, but nobody tells them.
Yeah.
And this latest strategy is inane, but nobody will give them feedback about it. And so can you just tell us about how you help people, leaders, build the challenge function? Because I hear that in what you're doing. And how do you help with that?
I think there's a few ways. I mean, I think if you want to be a leader that invites challenge, invites criticism in your organization, or wants to have a team where that is the norm, then you have to focus on building safety so that people can do that, building psychological safety. Amy Cuddy, Amy Edmondson, beg your pardon, get my Amy's muddled up, but Amy Edmondson, in her research, around psychological safety, one of the things that she asked teams was, are you able to take an interpersonal risk without fear of retribution? And I think if you want to build that challenge function, if you like, you have to be on setting the safe container for challenge over and over again. It's not something that a leader can say, I'm open to challenge, and then expect everybody to always challenge them. There's positional privilege, there's hierarchy, there's power going on. So that's something that you have to keep reinforcing over and over again. And that's about your narrative as a leader. And that's about how you actively invite challenge at every stage. I think the other thing, and it goes back to a bit about what I was talking about before, about holding the mirror up, is that there are techniques in giving feedback that I work with leaders on, which are much safer ways of giving feedback than people might naturally just go to. So you're making feedback or taking all the judgment out of feedback and giving feedback about the business, I find is the most powerful way to do that. And if you can get people practiced in using that approach to giving feedback, it tends to be a lot more successful. So if you take an example, if we take an example to bring it to life, if I'm in a meeting with you, Brady, and I see you constantly cutting other people off, so you're you're domineering the conversation.
Let's workshop this right now. So that's me.
Yeah.
I shoot others down before they can develop their idea. I'm always interrupting. There's this kind of superiority. I know better. So I'm that cutting off of everybody else. So work with me here and give me the feedback.
Yeah. So if I give you some feedback and I say, Brady, you keep cutting them off, and why are you doing that?
I don't see myself. What I see myself trying to do is instigate great thinking, like get people to bring their best game. I'm trying to challenge people. So you're saying, and you're calling it cutting off. I don't get that.
Yeah. So so if you in that way that I gave you feedback, then what I'm eliciting straight away from you is I'm eliciting a defensive response because
Totally.
I've attacked you as a person. I've attacked your values. I've made you somebody who cuts other people off. Now, if I said to you, Brady, in that meeting, I think a few people were struggling to get their point across. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a completely different.
Yeah, they just Sorry, they seem to be so quiet. I don't know why they don't speak up. It's like this is a safe enough environment for it. But so, what is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I just noticed it. I was keen to get your views.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's people that are afraid to talk.
Yeah, I thought that maybe as well. I don't know. What do you think we can do to bring them into the conversation a bit more?
I mean, my way is like asking questions and pushing people and kind of poking a little bit just to try to bring people to life.
Yeah. I wonder whether we can contract that a bit before the meeting to say oh, we're going to be really challenging this meeting. That doesn't mean we don't want people to contribute. We just want, we're just really trying to drive to the right answer there. I don't know what you think about that.
The contracting ahead of time, I think would be amazing, actually. We've never really done that before.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see sort of what I'm trying to do there.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make it about you. I'm making it about the business. This is business feedback. This is just what I'm seeing that's going on. Mm-hmm. And then I'm asking a question. Now, obviously, at some point, there might be a point where I need to say, Brady, I think you might be part of the problem, mate,
Yeah.
But hopefully we would have gone back and forth by that many times that actually the heat of the situation is completely gone and you're just having a conversation about it. And then you can maybe make a joke out of it or whatever, and you can still get that direct message over. So I do think that people lack the basic skills about how to give feedback in a safe way that doesn't actually make people feel attacked and judged, which is, I think, is the worst thing that you can do, because we all want to believe that we are good corporate citizens and we are polite and all that sort of stuff. It's important to us, right?
Yeah. Tom, one of the things I love a lot of what you're saying, but this has come up a couple times now, and that is you're not expecting somebody to ride in and get the conversation perfectly right one time and change the person's behavior. It's always iterative. It's always building. You're always creating the bridge of trust, if you will. So taking the load off the person of expectation that I have to do it in one conversation. No, it's a relationship. And talk to us about that more iterative approach.
Yeah, and I mean, I talk about this a lot with coaching clients, so a friend of ours on our we have a podcast, Beyond Potential, and a friend of the podcast, a guy called Tom Henschel. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Tom. He's an exec coach from California. He's an ex-actor, and he has his own podcast called The Look and Sound of Leadership, which is an excellent podcast actually. But he came on and our podcast, and he talked about his view. So we were actually talking about managing up, how you manage up, but he talks a lot about business feedback. So I sort of pinched that off him. But he also talks about this idea of when you give feedback, you should never expect anything to change. Like, nobody owes you anything. And
That's
it really sort of
amazing.
resonated. Yeah, it really resonated with me, because you think that you have to go into these feedback conversations and you have to get the person to change and you have to get them to agree that they've been terrible and they're going to do something different. And actually, the iterative approach is something completely different than that. So it's not about you forcing somebody else to change or you imposing a change on somebody else. It's giving people data to make their own decision about change. And so the data is the business feedback. What they do with that, entirely up to them. And like, I use this approach a lot. If I'm being honest, sometimes I use it in my personal life as well. Sometimes you just got to keep saying the same messages over and again in an observational way, and not make it about the person that you're talking to. Just say what you see is happening. And sometimes you might have to do that 50 times before there's any change. So just be patient and recognize you have no control over this situation. All you can control is just you and, your resilience and how much you can cope with it.
I love that. It feels to me like expecting that I am owed a response and I deserve that you will change. There's some violence. There's some violence to that. There's an exerting a level of control over the other person's sovereignty that it actually looks a lot like colonization. I will swoop in and I'm gonna subjugate you, and I'm going to impinge my value system and my belief system and my behavior upon you. And no, you don't eat food like that. You have to pray this way. And it's colonization to expect that we can just swoop in and the other person has to change.
Yeah, I never thought about it in those terms, but I think it's, feedback is very triggering for some people. I mean, it's triggering for me.
Oh, gracious, yeah.
Because it highlights, perceived faults, and I don't want people to think bad of me. I want people to think I'm good. I want people to think I'm good and I do good work and I'm a good person. And so if you get feedback wrong, which is so easy to do,
oh, man,
it can just be a disaster straight away, because it just hits everybody's identity and their buttons. And
so true.
Yeah.
We talk about it as the F-bomb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's so much stigma around it that as soon as I come to you and say, Tom, can I give you some feedback? Well, of course you can't say no, because then you're going to be viewed as that non-team player. You're defensive, you're insecure. So you have to say yes. But you're saying yes to somebody who might have a very dubious ability to give feedback in a way that is productive in any manner at all.
Yeah.
And so you're really caught, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And look, giving feedback in the right way, or in a robust way, that gets a good outcome and doesn't make people feel triggered, is difficult. And often, we'll be running leadership programs, and then we'll have a section on feedback, and we talk about how to give business feedback. And sometimes I'll have to take 10, 20 examples from the delegates to say, I can't put this into leadership. I can't put this into business feedback. Can you put it into business feedback for me?
Right.
And I've done it so many times I can just do it like that, but it takes real practice to do it. And so you got to keep practicing and keep trying this stuff, and expect sometimes that it will go wrong and that will feel uncomfortable, but that's learning.
Yeah. There are times when somebody tells you a hard truth that it offends, but then later transforms. And I'm just wondering if you can point to a time in your life where, as a chief people officer or CHRO, where somebody shared some feedback with you that offended, but then transformed you.
Gosh, God, this must be loads and loads of examples of where that's happened.
I'm putting you on the spot, and please just say pass if it's not there for you.
Well, I mean, I think there have been times where I've been. I think it's where I've become quite defensive about things, and I've been defensive in what I for what I believe are very noble reasons. And, like I said with the email before, responding to the email, my natural response when somebody attacks me or somebody says that I've done something that's not great or whatever is to justify why I've done it and make it right. And it's making it right in my head. It's persuading myself that I've done the right thing as much as persuading the other person, because I said before, I've got this very strong sense of shame. Like I feel very ashamed of myself when I do something that's not to the best of my ability. So I've done presentations where they've bombed. I've been in remuneration committees where I've presented papers and not had a proper hold on all the facts and all the details that I need to, and I've been challenged on that, and that's hurt. And I've said, well, how on earth could I be responsible for knowing all this stuff when actually I should have known my stuff? And so the learning is go into a remuneration committee, make sure you know your numbers and make sure you know why you're proposing what you are proposing, because otherwise the board are going to give you a hard time and then you're going to come out looking silly. So yes, there's lots and lots of examples, Brady.
Yeah, exactly. Tom, if people want to work with Hex, what does that look like? So a CHRO who's listening today and go, I love the sound of this guy. I love the vibe that I'm getting, and I really want to reach out and work with Hex. I wonder what that would look like when Hex Consulting comes into my shop. What's that going to look like?
Well, we're only a small business, so Hex is mainly me, and but I have some brilliant associates that work with me. So, talking about CHROs in particular, so we have a proposition in Hex called Beyond Coaching. So we do a lot of coaching, but we believe that coaching isn't really enough in the modern age. So we go a step further and we consider ourselves thinking partners. So we structure, and I structure my work with individual work with chief people officers, chief HR officers, in a few ways. But one of the key products that we have is a 1-day intensive. So we work with people, we get together with them for a whole day. And, we go really deep into what's going on for that individual. So that will involve looking at, what their purpose is, what their values are, beg your pardon, where they want to make an impact, doing some stakeholder mapping to make sure that they understand who are the key relationships and they're managing them really effectively, thinking about areas that they've got for development, using the CHRO impact framework to really get a robust view of where they are doing well and where they can do better and how they fill those gaps. So we do that as a standalone, but we also do that as part of a longer coaching process as well. So we do the intensive at the beginning, and then we work with leaders on an individual basis after that. But coaching, beyond coaching, is only really a part of the work that we do. So we go in and we coach teams. We use a systemic team coaching approach to build teams' effectiveness, and we often work with teams that are not getting on very well, all the way up to teams that are already really performing well but want to go to that that extra sort of level of performance. And I think we want to enjoy it, right? Okay. So one of our values in Hex is to enjoy ourselves, and we're only enjoying ourselves if the client's enjoying themselves as well. So what we do is we enjoy working with people. We make friends with our clients. Our clients tend to work with us for a long period, and we go really deep and we make sure they get what they want. And we I don't know what I'm trying to say. I should have this pitch better. We're just really passionate about making people better and helping people find, joy in what they do, confidence in who they are, fulfillment in what they achieve. It's all about having a good life.
Yeah, but it was clear actually to me, and it's multimodal. I can get coaching from you as a CHRO. You can do the 1-day intensive, from which many coaching conversations could happen in order to really metabolize all the things that happen in the intensive. I might have high-performing teams that just want to be more enhanced. I might have some struggling teams that it's more of an intervention. But there's just a lot there that people could work with you on.
Yeah. And, when I talk about going beyond coaching, I mean, if one of the things that I just really enjoy working with, but particularly with CEOs on actually, is just providing CEOs with, something that they're not able to get from people within their organization. And that really is a thinking partnership. It's being able to share stuff without fear of judgment. Because a CEO, they can share a lot of stuff with their chief HR officer, but the chief HR officer works for them. Ultimately, there's always going to be a reticence there. They can share a lot with their chair, they can share a lot with their board, but there's always that sort of power dynamic going on there as well. So, I like to think that when I'm working in a thinking partnership with a CEO, I really am able to, they're able to tell me absolutely anything that they need to, and we can have a really constructive conversation about it and work out what's the change that I need to make, whether that's behavioural or action.
Hey, behind you, you've got a bunch of medals. Are you like a triathlete? Or are you a runner? What are those?
A runner.
Medals? Oh, you're a runner.
Yeah, I'm a runner. I'm actually doing my first full marathon a week on Sunday. So I've done lots of half marathons, never done a full one. So I'm all ready to go.
Where's your first marathon going to be? Is it London?
It's in Manchester in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Which is my hometown. So that's where I came from originally.
Oh, yeah. So it's like semi-north, like Leeds would be a little bit more north and etc. But you're just down the road from Leeds, right?
We call it north. I mean, I don't live in Manchester anymore, but we definitely call it north. But it's a great place, great city.
It is a great place.
Anyone should go there. Yeah.
And my son-in-law's from Leeds, so we we get there, and then up in Yorkshire Dales. It's like
lovely, yeah.
I mean, you live in one of the most magical places in the world, from my perspective. Yeah.
Oh, that's yeah. Well, I think I've been to Canada a few times, and I think Canada's pretty magical as well. So
yeah, well, I hope you get back here. So people want to find you. Where do they go?
They can link in with me on LinkedIn. So I'm just Tom Emery on LinkedIn. They can go to my website, which is www.hex-development.com. And they can also find me on Instagram, which is @TomEmeryHex, and TikTok on @TomEmeryHex as well. So I'm everywhere. But yeah, if anybody's got any questions to ask me or wants to just drop me a line, always really happy to hear from them.
I bet they will. Tom Emery, thank you. It was delightful to meet you. I knew it was going to be good, and I know that people are going to enjoy viewing or listening to this podcast. And I can't wait to be on your podcast soon. That's coming up as well. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. We're looking forward to that, Brady. So thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. I've had a great time.
It was delightful to meet you. All the best.
Yeah, all the best.